We're live. Michaela.
Hello.
I saw that change right as you said that, and I was like, no. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Bibliomancy for Beginners. This is a bi-weekly book club where we meet and chat about books for about an hour. We also have a monthly book club called Nostalgia Junkie where we will be reading the His Dark Materials series, the first episode of which came out literally yesterday. So if you didn't see that, go watch that. Also, we'll be doing one tonight, and then the next one won't be for 2 weeks. So we're all
God
book
bless.
yeah, we're all book clubbed out for a little while. Tonight we will be discussing A Fierce and Subtle Poison by Samantha Mabry. Um,
Mabry, I think.
this is a 2016 book. It's new from this year. It's also a debut book for this author, so
Oh,
that's super
cool.
cool. Yep, it's her first book. It's a Latin American text, sort of, if that makes
hmm
sense.
It's set
Um,
in Puerto Rico,
written by a Latin American author. Um,
rooted, steeped in that.
Puerto Rico is technically part of the USA, though. It's our
Well,
territory.
it is a territory.
Yeah.
It has
Anyway,
a slight history and culture.
because they won't let it be an actual state because 50 states is too nice.
Yeah.
hmm We're waiting for
Um,
Texas to
Also, white
secede.
people.
yeah, also white people. We're gonna talk about that later because I have a point about white people to talk about
Also, white people.
later, of which we are all.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway,
Yes.
this is a book club. We will be discussing the characters and events of the novel. If you don't want to be spoiled, there will be a point in which I will say, okay, there's going to be spoils from this point on, but we always start with a description of the book and then our overall spoiler-free reviews, so don't run away yet. I'm going to read the back of the book for you first, or maybe not. Maybe I'll read. Nope, that's not helpful either.
Maybe we'll,
Oh, I
maybe I
got it.
won't.
Okay, sorry. How would you describe your condition? I asked. Isabel didn't respond. Instead, her eyes landed on a wasp, possibly the same one that had been buzzing around my ear earlier. Isabel turned her chin slightly in its direction. She blew out as if extinguishing a candle flame. For a split second, the wasp hovered in the air. Then it dropped, dead to the ground. And that's the back of the book.
The inside flap is under 20 words, so
Some
yeah.
say she grants wishes, some say her touch kills. One boy is drawn into her enchanted world.
That's all you got.
And
Uh,
it's so funny because what I was just reading on Goodreads earlier is like super long.
yeah,
Really?
Yeah.
I found we found that Goodreads can be spoilery in their review.
Ooh, it
Yeah.
can. Whereas I chose this for book club entirely based off of the 20 words on the inside flap.
And the
I
fact that
nearly
the first couple pages mentions Borges.
No,
it does.
Michaela mentioned that before. I think before I noticed. No, that was
No.
you. You said that before I saw it.
Oh, wait, that's
So,
true. I did see that. We found this in the bookstore while we were searching for Taylor's pick, so I was there when he found this book.
and I was like, yep, this is good. We're reading this.
Fun fact, about a year ago, Taylor and I did a discussion on Borges' short stories, so if you want to go
Did.
watch that, you can
And
totally
Gretchen
do
skipped it.
that.
I was busy. I was working. I was TAing and RAing a summer camp. Listen.
There was a flood!
There was a flood. No one needed me. I had to go.
It's not my fault! I wish I knew the entire. Just go on.
Anyway, so yeah, that super vague and mysterious back cover and inside flap piqued your interest and you haven't read the book yet? There you go. Before you make any decisions, though, you should listen to what we have to say about the book having read it. And Gretchen, you can go first. What's your overall review?
Um, because this was Taylor's pick, I was predisposed to hate it. As when I initially opened the book, I felt that it got off to a very slow beginning. I think I reached the 28% mark in my Kindle before I went, oh, ah. And after that, I was It's beautifully written. There's definitely a beautifully talented writer here with Samantha Mabry. And I was just like, oh, it was headed towards something beautiful, and I was so into it, and it was a 4-star book, hands down for me. And then the ending happened, and I was disappointed, and so my Goodreads rating is 3 stars. So for a debut, I think it's an extremely successful debut that shows that Samantha Mabry has a lot of talent and only up to go. But as a book, as a single entity, I was excited, and then I was disappointed.
I'm along the same lines there. I feel like I was sort of... The writing was very successful in this in the way that you get sucked into it in a way, and it's a quick read because you're just following along with what the story is going. The pacing is really done well as just the writing structure itself. I also happen to agree that the ending was not exactly what I wanted. I wanted something a little more from it, or maybe a little less. It's sitting in that thing where, like, it either should have ended earlier or there needed to be more after that, right?
Yes.
So that is a thing that happened, and I guess Gretchen and I agree with that. But it is it's a good one, I think, and definitely for a debut. This was very strong for a debut. So I look forward to her future books. Hopefully, she comes out with some more good stuff.
Yeah, as with you guys, I loved the writing, perhaps more than you two did, because I just, throughout the whole thing, I just adored her writing style. I didn't really have an issue with pacing, because this book was such a quick read, despite being, 300 pages. Then again, I also have very different preferences on pacing than Gretchen. I did not have as much of an issue with the ending as you guys. I totally understand where you come from, and while I don't think it was perfect, the general idea of it, like the plot stuff, I liked. And so it was just the smaller details that I was less than pleased with. But overall, I still thought it was the ending that I wanted from it, so I didn't have an issue with that.
I want to take that sentence and table it for after we get into the spoiler section, because I think that's a very interesting point to take forward.
That sounds like a threat.
I'm gonna do the thing and say, now we're in the spoilery section. There also might be swearing. It happens sometimes. Swearing happens.
Depends on the episode.
I read somewhere today that people who swear a lot have higher IQs sometimes. And I was like,
I'm a genius!
Yeah, I know. It must be because we're so smart. But yes, if you haven't read the book, we do recommend that you read it. So run along, go do that, and come back to us. This video will be up on the channel as a VOD. You can watch it then. No worries. You don't have to be with us live. It is perfectly fine. Yeah, so let's get into it. Go ahead, Gretchen. What do you want to say?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I feel like we should probably talk about something else before we talk about the ending.
Start.
We're just going to start at the end and back up from there.
The ideas are fresh.
I just found it really interesting that you said, that the ending wasn't perfect, but it had the idea and the element, the idea that you wanted from it. And I think that that's so interesting, because a lot of times with YA books that I feel push, especially a trope boundary, even if they don't do it successfully, if they do it enough, I'm like, yeah, I'm totally into this. And so I thought it was interesting that you said that, and I had the exact opposite reaction to the ending, where I was like, this is the idea of the ending that I wanted, but I just felt that, because like Michaela said, there was it should have either ended earlier or gone farther. It just left you in that weird middle space. So I was like, this is everything I wanted, but so unsuccessfully that I can't go forward with this.
You would go so far as to call it unsuccessful.
I wouldn't say unsuccessful. I would say unsatisfying.
Yes, that's better.
Yeah.
And I mean, not unsatisfying, because the idea I
Can
mean,
we get
and when
into
he,
specifics here just to help me out?
yeah, no, I'm about to. So
Okay.
like when he goes ahead and he says like, I really love that she makes this guy into Lucas into someone who has this hero complex, and
Hmm.
he thinks that he needs to save everybody because I mean that is like the YA trope, like the main character guy is like I'm gonna save the girl, it's gonna be great, and at the end he literally says like I can't save her. If I save her, I'm killing her in that way. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, thank
Hmm.
you so much for giving this ending because if he had jumped in there, if he had saved her, I literally would have. Well, I couldn't have thrown it across the room because it's on my Kindle, but like visceral, angry reaction would happen. Then I was so thankful for that, and I loved it. And then it kept going and
Yeah.
kind of undid what it had just tried to do.
What? Hold on, I'm just. What? So like him going back to the island and like kind of figuring his life out a bit, or?
Well, yeah, that, but like just like these two girls are in the ocean, and one of them will crawl out and kiss me, and because like there was enough magicalness in the book for me to be like, are you talking on a literal level? Or you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like it introduced enough.
I.
Isabel and Marisol's death were such powerful
Mhm.
events that to have them partially undone.
Oh no.
Gretchen, come back to us.
Okay, because
Gretchen.
Casey, when she was saying she wasn't going to be able to make it, gave me some
Notes.
info that, yeah, that I think will connect or perhaps bridge between mine and Gretchen's perspectives. Because while I was totally on board with his kind of like lovesick romantic pining over these dead girls, which is like completely centered on himself there.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's unreasonable, it's unrealistic what he's imagining. But what Casey latched onto, which I didn't, and I think gets to the heart of Gretchen's, is that um, so Lucas is kind of annoying in that while well written and interesting, he reduces everyone around him to a pawn in his coming of age story. So
Mm-hmm.
Marisol and Isabel become his symbols more than autonomous characters, which is a shame. And so I guess with the ending, it gets a little too heavy with him um, co-opting their existences and deaths towards how have I changed instead of just letting the deaths narratively stand on their own. Would you say that's a little closer to?
I guess it's still for me just because it really does seem like in that moment when he says, I recognize that I can't save her. Like it really does feel like he learned something there. So even with that reading, it feels like that last bit is like the step backwards.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
why would you undo that?
I didn't read it as a literal she's gonna crawl out of the ocean because he
No.
says he was thinking about a story that he was gonna write, and part of me is like, is it then, are we then supposed to believe that this book that we just read is said
Mm,
story?
I don't think so.
But like at
But
the
yeah,
same,
no.
it's sort of like weirdly half implied, and it's
Mhm.
not like Toni Morrison is great with the whole endings where you're like left thinking about what the whole thing that you just read was, and I feel like this was like trying to emulate that sort of idea where you have to, with the last couple of lines, you're then supposed to stop and think about everything that's happened before, but I don't think that it did it in a way that built on the book. It did it in a way that
Mhm.
sort of undermined it.
I
yes.
can see that because he is building it up to be this legend. While
And
this, as a novel, is a very realistic take on it.
in a way, it's,
So, no, that's me agreeing with you.
yeah. The other thing I would say is that I didn't quite understand the whole bit where, like, after her death, he takes on her mantle and people start bringing him wishes. Like, did he?
No, no, same.
That I wasn't
It
sold on,
it
but that's
didn't make
also
sense. Like, why,
It didn't
why,
make
why?
enough of sense. Like, I could believe the transition if there was actually some substance there in
Or
why
if
it's happening.
anything else was happening, like he started being poisonous.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Well,
but like he literally, like people just are like, you seem like a person I should give wishes to. So,
I mean, on one hand, he sees that god, like the little drowned girl in the tree. So, like, we understand he is part of this bloodline that can do it, but Isabel also had this legend built around her why people would
Yeah.
go for it, and it was only sort of shifted towards the end when that random old um, senora gave her the wish on the highway, and I'm like, I don't know why.
yeah,
Yeah. There was definitely something there that was very undercooked. And for me, I guess, because, I mean, you know me, my thing is always, female agency kind of thing. And I just
Hmm.
felt like her kind of character and the complexity of her character was undermined again by his being able to so easily take up the mantle. Like, what
Hmm.
what makes him that special? Like, he's this snooty little white rich boy, like, why? And I know that she says to him, you take the wishes now, but it's like, did, no,
Hmm.
no.
yeah, yeah. It felt like it was supposed to be like a symbolic like handing off of the torch of like I think you have learned enough to be the selfless one who has to take all of these other people's pain in and hold on to it because that's sort of how I perceived it as she had suffered so much and was taking other people's suffering in some sort of way to try and like I guess grant the wish is to alleviate
Hmm.
their pain. But he he doesn't feel like that sort of character. Like he, at least not at the very
Hmm.
end. Sort of
Yeah,
in that like first ending bit where he's allowing her basically to kill herself in order or sacrifice herself in order to
Hmm.
stop her father from hurting all of these girls and to end her own suffering in the process in a way that is meaningful to her. That felt like a selfless character. He had grown and realized that everything isn't about him. But then when we get this other ending, even after all of these people are giving him their wishes, he brings it back to himself and like seems to have completely forgotten what he learned.
I think if it had ended with one person giving him the wish, instead of in the end him like getting a bunch of them, that would have been a lot stronger, and that it implies this transition, this
Right.
potential.
Like if it was just him after the whole thing coming back the next summer and he stands on the beach where it all happened and the little boy walks up and hands him the wish, that would have been like A plus, good ending. But because there's these weird other elements, it just sort of muddled it and undermined what had been being built the entire time.
I think
Because it
it was
implies
like,
his arc is finished. That
Yeah.
new transition that's already completed, and we're like, oh, okay. Go on,
I
Yeah.
Gretchen.
think, I think that my feeling with this ending is just that, like, it's too much. Like, it's literally not just tied up in a bow, but then double knotted. And I was
Hmm.
like, no, 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 back it up, just stay back. Like, literally, like, because there's not enough to wonder about, I think, in the end. And I
Mm.
think that what we're describing is that, like, there were too many, like, that could have been left a little bit wider open, but like all of these layers and like trying to symbolically bring it back around, like it just didn't. It's too heavy-handed and it's too much. Um, which, I mean, again, for a debut is not like, that's trendy in debuts, but like, yeah,
Hmm.
that double knotted tied in a bow.
Yeah.
Uh, I think
Untie
she
it,
was
untie it.
nervous that it wouldn't be enough. Like, I feel like this might just be first novel jitters. Like, if she doesn't give us everything, we're not going to pick up on it. So she didn't trust that her story was enough as it was, and needed to just add that extra bit more.
Yeah. Which is a little disappointing, but at the same time, some of our favorite authors had kind of shaky first books and then were able to learn from that and grow and become brilliant. And I'm talking about Joe Hill here
Yeah,
because Heart-Shaped Box is great, but it's not brilliant.
no. And if you do have a brilliant, like, flawless first book, you never write another one.
Because you're like, I did it.
You're Harper Lee.
Also, if you can
If
write a
you ever write
flawless
another
first
book,
book,
everyone will despise you.
yeah. Well, I mean, yes. If you write a flawless first book, I already despise you because, like, no, rude.
Rude.
Don't be that talented. Back up. Go away.
um, I kind of want to talk about the white people thing now.
Okay.
Um,
Hit it.
he talks about how Lucas, because he's perceived as
Mhm.
white, and in a way he is, but at the same time, he discusses how his mom was Dominican and that she was blonde and pale skin, and I sort of wanted to talk about how there is this, in at least in America, this cultural idea that everybody in South America is dark skinned when
Mhm.
there's sort of two groups, the people who are actually three groups, the people who are dark skinned because they come from like Maya, Inca, Aztec ancestry, they come from the Native American populations there basically,
Mhm.
or they're pale skinned, light haired, come from like Spanish or Portuguese ancestry, or they're African American because they were slaves that were brought over. So there's all of
Mhm.
these groups that are constantly intermingled and mixing. They're very mixed race, like in general, everywhere. And while I haven't been to Puerto Rico to know that all of the Puerto Ricans look the same, I doubt that they would just because of the history of the area,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right?
I
So
liked. Oh, go on.
so that idea of like this subtle racism implied by whiteness doesn't quite jive with me. It does in a way because I
Yeah.
do understand that all of the white people are still going to be the people who
Yeah.
conquered and killed
I mean,
people, but at the same time,
Lucas
eh,
and his dad definitely stand out as the outsiders from Texas who show up every summer. But no, about his mom, I did like how, like, there was that one line in the second half of the book where it's like, oh yeah, I don't know who my mom's parents were. Like,
yeah,
like, she was adopted, and that was like one sentence, but it never actually
yeah,
undermines her, like, the fact
yeah.
that she is, you know, I think you said Dominican. I can't remember where she was from originally, but just that she was from there. Like, sure, they didn't know what her actual bloodline was, but she was there. She was a person.
I mean, for me, I kind of had an issue with the fact that, it's brought up. It's brought up quite early that his mom was. I think, like he says, like, my dad hates himself for falling for an island girl, and so like it's brought up
Hmm.
pretty early on that his mom was not Caucasian, but
Well,
could
she
well
wasn't Americanized.
American Caucasian, like American white,
Yeah.
Mm,
that whatever you want to call that. But no, because this is my issue though, is because like it's never he never complicates it because he talks about how they treat him as the white boy,
yeah,
and like I kind of just would have thought that at least once, or like at least once, he would be conflicted about that identity because he's he has that from his mom, and even if she like was very light skinned, like there's something there, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And so
And
it's
that's
just
yeah, that's
I
what
don't
I'm
know.
saying as well.
Yeah, I had an issue with that. It really, and that at points I felt like his mom was just, not white, so that you could have him like talking to the god later on and like thinking that he comes from this heritage as well. And I was like, why would you're just using the fact that he's potentially like mixed race to imply
Mm.
this later on? And I'm like,
Well.
And that's what I'm talking about is like I felt like this weird subtle racism was out of place because Latino and Latina is a cultural identity. It isn't a biological identity. there's so many different skin colors and racial backgrounds that make up the Latino and Latina community, that saying because somebody has blonde hair makes them not a Latino or not a Latina doesn't jive for me. It doesn't quite make sense.
I mean,
I
I
think it was
think
just the
I,
fact
I
that he
can
showed
say
up and said he
that
believed in a god.
well, coming from Texas might make you stand out because you're very clearly not from Puerto Rico, but at the same time, I feel like he shouldn't consider himself just like Caucasian. Like Gretchen
also,
said, he should be conflicted over it.
like, this really random detail. Like, he talks about the fact that his mom left his dad in Texas because there was no mountains or trees for her to climb in Texas, right? He says that there's that line, and then he says that she moved to New York. And I'm like, what the hell?
I wasn't sure if he was lying about that, and I probably forgot about it.
No, because I mean, I was so cognizant of like what is the point of his mother, you know, in a book that did seem to be trying to be very cognizant of, you know, the culture in which it was set and Lucas's outsiderness, and I was like, what?
In the same sentence, though, he said that they fell out of touch, but earlier in the book, I'm pretty sure he said, like, he never talked to her again. Like, he had no idea where she went, so I thought those were conflicting stories. I could be wrong, though. And in regards to your...
I feel like I'm with you, though, Taylor. Like, I feel like he was sort of making up an end to the story so that there was an end rather than what is the truth in most cases. When a parent disappears, they just disappear. And they're not.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess it just felt like he was...
Fault lines.
Sometimes they just disappear. Disappearing parents all over the place.
Disappearing everyone. Last 3 books.
Jesus.
Girls, parents.
Theme of the year, disappearing.
When will it stop?
Disappearing magical realism.
Yeah.
That's literally been this whole month.
Yep. Actually, though, yes.
Although, can I bring up a point? Is it okay if I like scoot away from this for a second? Because like speaking of things that were brought up just to influence the plot, the fact that Celia is immune.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. It didn't make sense to me. It
literally just seemed to have to happen, and that's why it happened.
Well,
and I was like,
it didn't have to. It just didn't really make sense.
I think it was to be like, oh, we can actually save Isabel. But then I'm thinking, like, she's going to have to go around her whole life with this child, like, clinging to her neck to soak this all up. And so it's like this idea of, like, okay, yes, she could do that, but would that even be the life? How would that really differ from her life now? So I thought it was like, okay, here's this idea, here's like a chance, but it's still just stalling her life out for other people's benefit.
Well, I mean, because like when Lucas goes to rescue her, and all of a sudden she becomes like Yoda, and saying all these really smart things, and being like, no, we actually have to follow her, and then it was just like, it just felt so overdone. I mean, I think that's my word for the ending. It's just overdone. But like, all of a sudden, Celia wasn't even like the smart child or like the endearing child who was like, no, we have to go get her. Like the scientist about whatever. She was just like saying like, she was voicing God's will.
It was a bit on the note. No, I mean like the scientist does love her. Like that was a bit on the nose, but it was just like, oh, you heart-wrenching 6-year-old, I guess.
Yeah, I think that my problem with her was that at that point she didn't feel like a 6-year-old anymore. Like,
yeah.
I can totally understand a 6-year-old being like, no, we can't leave her behind. It's dangerous. We have to go and get her because of just it's dangerous. We shouldn't leave people behind. Like 6-year-olds would totally be like that because that's what they were told. 6-year-olds being like, no, it is my purpose in life to go and find this woman and show you that everything. No.
No.
If Lilo from Lilo and Stitch would not say it, it doesn't belong in this book. Because I rewatched that movie for the first time. Like, this was the second time I've ever seen that movie, and it was
Can
right before I was reading this. So as I'm going through Celia, I'm like, yeah, okay, Lilo.
Can I say that I missed that TV show? Like, I really loved the Lilo and Stitch TV show,
Oh
and
my
I have
God.
not seen it since it stopped airing, and I like want to watch it.
It honestly has to be like the best concept for an adaptation to TV
And
show.
like, it was a
It worked a
quality TV
lot.
show.
I think it's better than the movie,
I don't know
although
if
it
it's
is less Elvis. It is less Elvis, but that's it.
it's difficult to pay for Elvis rights for a TV show.
Yeah.
Ohana means family. Family
See,
means
that's what
nobody was left behind.
And that's what I was thinking during the like hurricane. No one gets that. Can I also? So this is my thought about the setting.
Okay.
I thought it was gorgeously described. I think it was very evocative imagery-wise, but I also think Puerto Rico sounds like the worst place ever because there is always some cataclysm going down.
I think that's also very accurate, though.
It's either like world-shattering hurricanes or solid walls of mosquitoes. And they're like 2 days of middle ground. Yes, I understand what tropical areas are like, Michaela.
I was gonna say,
It's
you
like,
realize
how does anyone survive?
I don't know. I was wondering that at one point during this hurricane when they're all just running around places and breaking arms and shit. I'm like, how hasn't somebody died yet? What the hell? You're just running around in a hurricane on your moped. Okay.
Why was the scientist's dad in such a rush to toss that body into the ocean? Was it really just because he needed the storm to carry it away? Because my entire, like, my only, like, real criticism of this book was that Marisol and the other girl wash up on the same stretch of beach. And it is in the latter half of the book that we discover that they were being held on the complete other end of the island for experiments. So either he tossed them in the ocean, and they both, on, like, weeks apart, went around the island with the currents and were deposited in like the same 20-foot stretch, or he drove all the way back through the island down to the public beach and just like dropped a body there.
I think that it's more likely that the currents did it than he would do that. That seems
so
like a
specific.
Well, okay. I don't know how to explain.
Okay.
Currents do go to the same place. So, like, it would make sense that both of those bodies would end up at the same place. The problem is then, if he's been doing this for a lot longer than 2 girls, there should have been more bodies.
Why is it just like, this is a really convenient beach, which is why I'm now saying, like, okay, storm goddess. It's the storm goddess, don't ask questions.
And that's why, like, when later on when Isabel goes, yeah, there's been like 10 girls, and I was like, 10 girls, 2 bodies, and it's only the what? But
well, no, they found the other bodies. They just didn't care.
Well, but that was my thing about I believe her name was Sarah.
Yeah.
And like the fact that if you've been doing this long, I feel like you have to know that what's gonna get the authorities coming down is like, you know what I mean? Like,
well,
why would you not know that?
Trend of serial
killers. Good. My computer's about to die. I'm gonna go grab the charger for it. Continue.
Okay.
So if we follow the modus operandi of serial killers, the longer they go, once they start getting in a rhythm of things, they start not getting careless, but they start getting like overconfident, doing things because they can. They almost want to get caught. I'm not saying he's a serial killer. I'm saying he is coincidentally a serial killer. But that, you know, he thinks, oh, I'm never going to get caught. I can do whatever I want. Been listening to a lot of serial killer-based podcasts.
I mean, I would have understood if he said that, like, if his thing was, you know, it wasn't working with any of the locals, so I wanted to try you know,
Expanding the gene pool.
yeah, expanding the gene pool or something, but it's never brought up. There's just this one chick who's the entire reason the whole book gets set off.
It's
Really,
true. We don't really know why she did, because we don't know anything about Random White Girl. So we don't know if she like wandered into the courtyard and was like, "Hey, what's this?" and like poking things, but I don't know.
that's what it just felt. It just felt off that like because I understand what you're saying about serial killers, but at the same time, because I mean the doctor did really have a strong motive to protect his daughter, and I mean he even freaks out by the fact that Lucas comes by the house twice. So obviously secrecy is a really big deal to him. So like
Yeah.
to make that kind of slip up just felt very out of character.
There were a lot of moments of convenience in this book, some of which are more easily explained away by magic. But yes, they are definitely there.
Yeah, I guess yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that it's a testament to the writing in the book that for most of them, I was just like, I'll ride this wave. I'll take it. I'll go. Because you're right, it was such a fast read. I read it in 2 sittings, mostly out of necessity because I read most of this book, 80% of this book, starting at 5 o'clock today.
Yes, you did.
But I mean, it was besides the beginning, which was a bit slow for me. Like, I was just like, I'm ready to go on this with you, as opposed to like hitting every point of convenience and being like, oh my god, really? Which is how I felt in the Golden Compass. So,
I mean, I didn't even mind that Lucas was like an absolute bastard half the time.
He says it a couple times. That
Oh
he's
yeah,
like,
he's
oh yeah,
totally
I'm a
aware.
little shit. I'm the worst.
He's aware of it, and he's trying not to be. But like, there's so many moments where he'd be just like staring at Isabel's butt, and he's like, "Wait, my girlfriend of 3 days just died. I'm a bad person." And I'm like, "Yeah, man, you're a bad person."
I mean, I think it makes it tolerable though, because I think especially so many YA, either like main characters, male main characters, or love interests, are presented as bastards you're supposed to like, and they think that their arrogance is like a good quality, and you're just sitting there going, I want to take your teeth out one by one.
I think,
And
yeah.
no, just like because he's cognizant of it, and
Yeah.
that
And
makes him much better.
It's what latches on to one of my favorite parts of the writing, in that Mabry does a really excellent job of just like, I don't quite want to call it a thought process, because it's not really written in an internal monologue sort of way, but the way these thoughts just kind of rise up. So like, he just starts thinking about, kissing her or something. He's like, wait, no, fuck, stop, can't do that. And I think it's done in a very natural and fluid way, so it seems not like we're just going on these long digressions about something and then he reins it in. It was just like suddenly a thought and then reaction to it, and I think it felt very natural when I was reading that, which is why he didn't feel like a terrible person all the time.
I also think the fact that it isn't that he's trying to be a better person, it's that he's trying to be the best version of him that he can be, right? Like, it's not his journey to stop being an asshole, it's his journey to be slightly less of an asshole, just for this one girl, because really, she's got a sucky enough life.
I was not chosen to not be an asshole. I was
But I think
chosen
that's what makes
to be
it
slightly
so.
less of one now.
I think that's what makes it so relatable too, because so many of these stories are like, I'm gonna have a complete 180 character shift by the end of 200 pages, and you're like, nope.
No.
And I mean, that's I think too why the end of the book bothers me so much, is because like he doesn't have a complete character shift, but at that one moment when he lets her take her own life in the ocean, he has that realization of just like shifting just a step in the right direction, being like, oh, this is like my learning moment. So I mean, I like that.
All
He's
of my
just like,
girlfriends are gonna drown. I need to accept that.
It's really you. You have the curse the whole time. Rude. How rude. Um, there was another thing I wanted to talk about, and now I can't remember.
Oh, well, I'm just going to make one comment real quick while you try to remember it. And that's what I was so scared when he kissed her that first time that he was going to find out that his lips had like magical properties taken away. I was so scared that that's what was going to happen. And then he ends up sick for 3 days.
I
And he's
love
like, I'm
that.
such a moron. And I was just like, yes.
Like, he immediately just starts dying. It was great. Also, I really liked his dreams of the ghost nun. I think those were sweet. She was giving a foot massage and like asking about her letters. I'm like, oh, you're so sad, but nice.
Sweet.
It was
Ghost
like,
nun,
oh
best
yeah,
nun.
you live in the haunted room, and he's like, why did no one tell me this? How do they all know?
You live in the haunted one.
It was a side joke. We all just thought it'd be funny to put you in the haunted room
To
and
be
not
fair,
tell you.
the entire island doesn't really hate him so much as they just like are willing to let him be kind of run about in embarrassing situations. I didn't get the hate. Like, he's talking about how people hated him. I didn't get that impression.
That was one of the other things. That was what I wanted to talk about. This idea that he's such an outsider when apparently he goes every summer and has close friends and
I'm
relations.
surprised his Spanish wasn't better, but
Yeah.
You would think that somebody who has been going to Puerto Rico for the summer, not even just a
no,
trip,
just
like he spends months there each year, would be more part of the community, even if he's not a full-time member.
Well, I mean, I totally got
yeah.
the hate towards his father and his family, and so I can understand because he is like his father is a developer, and so I understood that completely. But there were these conflicting statements, like he says that he's an outsider, but then like when it gets really mosquito-y, he knows how to like protect himself from this mosquitoes with this home remedy told to him by the old senoras. And then he's like, yeah, people don't like it when I walk down the street, but I feel like these 3 friends that he has, like, he hangs out with their family all the time. Like, he's allowed to be at Marisol's funeral. Like, if they didn't or like go to the house
the wake
afterward anyways. Yeah,
thing,
the wake.
yes.
So it's just like, I mean, I feel like if he was that hated and these families and these people who hang out with him would get a lot of flack for that, or their families wouldn't want them around even if the boys do. So it's just like you say one thing and you show another.
It was said a few too many times for me to just write it off as him being melodramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Gretchen.
Oh no, I was saying especially because like I could understand it because of what his father does. So like.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like that was trying to make half of a political statement about island stuff because it is, well, not conservation. I watched an anthropology video on Haiti, I think.
Nerd, go on.
No, it was Jamaica. And how all of the money is on the coastline for white people who have built hotels and stuff, and the actual people who live there are all the maids, the cooks, the entertainers, and they make like no money because
horrible
money. So there's this idea that people are bringing economy to the island, but it doesn't actually stay there. It's actually going back to the U.S. If that makes sense. And like it was her like sort of half making that statement by being like, the dad's just a pawn in this scheme of like taking over this island that has belonged to these people for years and making it into a vacation spot for wealthy people instead of actually helping to boost the economy of the island itself and make it like self-sufficient. But it's not there enough. And then when he's like, they hate me because of this, and then I have friends and I'm part of this community, it's not entirely cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe that's the
Yeah.
poison. That's the subtle poison. It's white people all along.
The fierce and subtle poison of white people.
I mean, I'd be willing to believe it.
World History 101.
The fierce and subtle poison. In
Of
parentheses, white.
people.
No, in parentheses, just
Oh.
white people. White people are the poison.
I mean, in this context, too, upper class white people, because, like, I mean, my area
Capitalism?
my area is primarily white, but we're a two-class society as well, where you either
So-
have your third home here or you take care of the third home. So
Yeah.
Capitalism is a fierce.
that's what I mean. Like, yeah, I totally got it,
possible,
but
though.
I was like, me, confusing.
It wasn't done enough or was done slightly too much.
No, I definitely don't think it was done too much. It was just not.
No, like the
There
book
were
in
things
general,
that
though.
were present. Oh yeah, okay.
The book in general was like it had underdone and overdone, and very like I don't want to say like very little had like the perfect medium, but like I think that the book did tend to do this a little bit.
It oscillated between I want more of this or maybe a little less of that.
But at least for me, that was only when I started really thinking about it. Like just going through on a read, it was still satisfying. There was nothing that stopped me in the midst of it.
The only thing that I was upset about was the ending, and that's unfortunate because that's the thing that you really take away from the book generally.
Sure.
Like the whole experience was fine. It was a nice read. It was quick. The writing was great. But then when you get to that ending and you feel like it needed something, it sort of leaves a bad taste in your mouth about the whole thing. It colors the rest of it.
That's what I was telling Michaela before this started, and I think, Taylor, you've gotten up for this, so this is actually new information for you, which is that when I consider a book as a half star, so like I technically consider this a 3.5-star book, when I go to rate it on Goodreads, I don't have a half-star option, so I have to go 3 or 4. And it's the way I feel when I put the book down is what tells me whether or not I'm going to rate it as 4 or 3 stars. And because of the ending, like if I had stopped before the ending, it would have been like 4 stars, boom, beautiful writing, beautiful concept, I'm here for this, like solid 4 stars. But then the ending happens, and I'm like, ugh. Like that, it leaves that sour taste in my mouth that gets it a 3-star rating on Goodreads just because I like can't. That's how I felt when I closed the book. So
The ending was a bit too Gatsby-esque. It goes for the same sort of ending as The Great Gatsby, and while it was a beautifully written ending, was not the best ending for this story.
Yeah.
Because, say what you will, I thought this was a beautifully written ending.
Oh, it was very well written.
yeah, I'm not gonna contest that at all.
Technically, it was very well done, and
Technically, this whole book was really well done.
Yeah. But I'm going to use a dance reference. There's
Wow.
people who have been trained technically to dance really well, and they can do all of the moves flawlessly. And then there are the people who have the emotion who might not be technically trained or might be technically trained, but when you watch them dance, you get captured by it. And this had a taste of like someone who has trained for years and years and years, but is just starting to realize how to bring the emotion through. Like it wasn't fully formed. The technical aspect is down. She has been training and training. She knows how to build a sentence, but she needs to learn how to make the emotional ride of the book land properly.
She's not quite at the Numa Numa guy level.
Sure. Yep.
Relevant.
Sure.
Still relevant.
Oh my god. I mean, that's what I will say about this book is, I mean, it makes me excited to read what she does next.
Right?
Hands down. Like, 3.5, like, I can rate something 3.5 stars and never want to pick up another book by that author. And I can rate something 3.5 stars and say, like, you know what's going to be great? The next thing you write. Like, I am there for that entirely. So I think that that's a really important distinction to make, is that like if we ever like do another month of sequels in season 7, like Samantha Maverick's next book is on it. Taylor has no choice.
She has the book called The Real Marvelous coming out next year.
Sold.
She also has a Twitter.
She has a Twitter. Taylor, tweet at her that we're talking about her book.
Well, we can tweet her afterwards. She only has 682 followers. That means we'll get to see her rise.
Yay!
Rise in glory.
Rise
I mean,
like
I'm
the
gonna be
phoenix.
honest. When Taylor picked this book up in the bookstore, I was like, "You've got to be kidding me!" Like, I just got House on Mango Street flashbacks, and I was not there for that, and so I was not predisposed to hate this book because it was Taylor's pick. It was because I read that opening and I was like, for real. So it did win me over mostly. My ride was this with this book.
I think it was more like.
Yeah.
Okay, I
The
need to
mics-
stop reading Samantha Mabry's Twitter and tune into this video. Hey guys, I'm present.
We're a little bit under the hour mark, but I don't really have anything else to talk about. Do you guys have anything you want to say?
It's a really short book, so.
Yeah, and we talked about the pros and the cons of it. Like we've
Yeah.
gone over it. We've
Yeah.
done the thing.
And I mean, we do always have less to say about the books we actually like. So.
Yes.
Yes.
I think we did a good job.
Yeah.
More than some books that we liked of
Oh.
actually covering ground.
Yeah.
Pros and
A
cons.
thing that we didn't talk about at all this hangout. This is a young adult book. We didn't talk about really young adult tropes or
Oh.
young adult issues. I didn't feel like this had many of the issues I
No.
usually attribute to a young adult novel.
It was
I think.
Yeah.
I mean, because I brought up a whole bunch of things while I was talking, just like randomly,
Yeah,
just being like,
you
I
did.
expected this and this came up. But I'm just saying that I think that it would be very easy to call this book a coming of age novel, which it
Could go either way.
it could go either way, and that is the staple story in young adult literature. I think that you could call it a romance of a sort, which is also a very
Magic romance.
yeah. Which is very young adult, but I think that it deals with it in complicated ways that make it interesting instead of just another young adult story.
So good young adult.
Yeah. Despite it being about teenagers and, being, a coming of age story, I never actually thought of this as a YA book in the way that, some other ones we've read, I've been like, this is such a YA book, whether or not I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to go rate this on Goodreads, and even while I was having that discussion of do I put it at 3 or 4, and then I decided on 3, I was sitting there because I think I've rated, no, The Bone Gap was 2, but I was sitting there thinking, I've just been rating these books 3 stars, but, I think that out of all of the books I've rated 3 stars lately, I hated Taylor's the least, and I was really upset about that.
My goal was for people to like this book. 4 out of 4 of us, even though Casey isn't here, liked this book. This is the first.
Yeah, I think, Taylor, that this was a good melding of the things that we all like in books.
Yeah.
It had the writing, it had the pacing, it had the plot elements, it had mystery elements, which I enjoy, it had magical realism. There's all of these little things that made it nice for each of us, whereas I feel like the other ones catered to one or the other of us more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is the last of our specifically YA reads, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like this really, completely by accident, our 3 books were very similar in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And Michaela, I would agree. I think this does actually take those elements and, while not perfect, executes them the best.
Yes.
I still liked Bone Gap better, but that's my personal opinion, and that book
I like
really
Bone Gap.
catered to me.
I
Like,
Yeah.
like
it was a Michaela book.
the
Yeah. I mean, I think that out of the three that we read as well, like this was they do kind of in a way feel like the same book.
It's all
Um,
about disappearances and vague magics.
yep. Like this definitely though was also my favorite,
I
followed
th-
by Invisible Fault Lines, followed by the Bone Gap.
Rude.
Wow.
Rude.
Well, because but that's the point though. The Bone Gap was your like it catered to
Yeah, it's
Michaela's reading
true. It's
style,
true.
which is closer to mine than yours is, I think, but is still pretty like there's like me and then there's Michaela and then there's you
Hmm.
in terms of like if we're using a spectrum where we
Yeah.
all sit.
All right. A Fierce and Subtle Poison.
hmm
What's next?
Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides. In 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides, which is the first book in our theme of revisiting authors we've already discussed. Our very first season, we talked about The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides, and it was kind of an iffy one because some of us liked it and some of us didn't, but we had a good discussion about communal narratives and the romanticization of suicide and things like that. So if you want to go watch that, you definitely can. Middlesex is about intersex characters, so it's got some gender stuff going on. A
Oh.
lot of people call Middlesex his Pierce de Resistance, the best thing he has ever written.
Ooh, dude.
So we're gonna be doing that, and hopefully it's a good one.
We have a
Uh,
much wider range coming next month for
Oh, I
topics.
am
It's going to be
so
hilarious.
excited. Gretchen, what's your sequel again?
I'm doing the sequel to A Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Lainey Taylor.
Okay, cool. And then I've got Walter Mowers' 13 and a Half Lives of Captain Blue Bear. And Gretchen didn't read the last Walter Mowers, and I'm so excited to confuse her.
That's maybe an episode you shouldn't watch. Not the 13 and a half lives of Captain Bluebear, but
Walter
the last Walter Mowers was just me and Taylor, and it was one where we agreed on literally everything. So it was just me and Taylor going, "Yep."
Like, we didn't like the book perfectly. Like, we had pros and cons, but we agreed on every single
Every
one.
single point.
Like, oh yeah.
Literally down to who is your favorite character. Same.
Yeah. I have nothing more to add. You summed it up.
Which makes a very boring book club.
I'm here to bring the devil's advocate.
Blue Bear is a very different text. We'll have material to discuss.
Okay.
There are literally 13 and a half different stories, basically.
Oh, good.
And awesome. So
Yeah.
we will see you in 2 weeks for Middlesex. If you would like to be told about everything that we are reading, you should go to the Goodreads group, which is listed down below in the description. I feel like we haven't used any of the social media for the book club at all so far, but we've all been ridiculous. We might have to figure out a way to do it properly in the future. We might have to talk about how to do it, because I feel like we should use our social media, especially if we're planning to do something more continuous now that we're out of school.
Yeah.
Similar to like in
I mean,
Bibliomancy.
yeah, we had a plan with when it's your pick, you're responsible for it. Once I think season 3, we tried
We
real
were pretty
hard.
good about it.
But the problem with
For, like, the
that
first
is
month.
that one person is in charge of all of the social media. Like, that's such a huge thing to be involved with. Whereas I feel like if we each picked a social media and was like, this is my social media, like one of us does Vine, one of us does Instagram, and one of us does Twitter, and maybe we rotate each week. It's like,
That's fair.
that's more. We don't need to talk about this on air.
No,
Bye,
wait,
Let us know
guys.
about your thoughts. If you
Yeah,
if
if
you know
you
how to
have
like
thoughts,
coordinate
let us
things,
know. We're so
if
confused.
you stuck around to this part, let us know. If
Please
you're
tell
still
us how
here, you have an
to
opinion.
run a book
Do you
club.
want to run our social media? Let us know.
Can we have an
Unpaid
unpaid intern?
internship. We
Okay.
offer unpaid internships for college credit.
I don't think we can actually
We can
do
do
that.
that. We can.
Anyway.
Don't worry.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
We'll see you
Okay.
guys in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.